Hey there, this is vlog number 5, I believe, and I chose Christmas tree setting just to be festive. My last vlog I did was on a blog I called Taste and See, and so if you missed it, you can go to YouTube and type in Taste and See and find it, or you can find it on my Facebook page. This one I wanted to talk about was a blog I wrote back in actually 2016, so a long time ago, but I titled it Righteous Anger. And it was based on a verse I had been reading in Romans, and it was Romans 12, verse 9, and it says, "Love must be sincere, hate what is evil, cling to what is good." And, Romans is so deep, and so sometimes there's things over my head, or I just have to read them over and over again just to kind of let it sink in. And I was just praying about this verse, and I loved the verse, but I had just never seen how those two sentences went together. The love must be sincere part, and then the hate what is evil, cling to what is good part. There's two sentences, and I agreed with both of them. I thought both of them were good sentences. I just had never really seen the fact that they were actually meant to be one after another because they related in some way. And as I was praying about it, I just felt like God really helped me to see kind of what Paul was trying to say and why he wrote them one after another and why they went together. And one of the main things that God showed me was a truth about him that kind of made it clear as to why these two sentences went together. And that truth is that God himself is holy, completely holy. There is no flaw in him. He is sinless. He is perfect. He is completely holy in a way that we probably won't ever understand until we get to heaven. And so out of that truth, if our love for him is sincere and our love for his holiness is sincere, then we are going to hate all that is evil, because all that is evil defames his holiness, and it mocks who he is, and it disrespects the holiness of God. It disrespects his perfection. It disrespects the goodness of him. And so if our love for him is sincere, then that will make us hate all that is evil around him. And if our love for him is sincere, we will also cling to all that is good, because all that is good is just God. There's nothing apart from God that is good. Even though the world may try to convince us of that, there is nothing apart from God that is good. And so if our love is sincere, and it says love must be sincere, and then it says hate what is evil, cling to what is good. So out of our sincere love for God, we will hate what is evil, and we will cling to what is good. And I loved how it related. It was just a kind of a revelation for me, but I just really started thinking through how that's played out in our lives, and sometimes how difficult it is, like starting out with just our walks with him while living in this world, this evil world. I think sometimes we get it in our heads that we can have an intimate, close, loving relationship with him, and yet have this like neutral, impartial stance on the evils that are going on all around us. And it's not true, we try to kind of just take a back seat or hide in a corner or just not have a say about anything, thinking, well, the world says that hate is bad, all hate is bad, and we should love everything, and why do we have to hate anything? And if I love God, why do I have to hate anything? And why is that? And why should that be a result of loving God sincerely? And that really is what the world kind of pulls us into. And yet, if our love is sincere for God, the result of that should be a rise of hatred towards everything that goes against him. And if it's not, if we are taking that neutral standpoint against all the evil around us, that in itself will pull us away from our sincere love for him. It's going to cause pride to rise up. It's going to cause us to kind of venture into the like the ways of this world are going to begin to kind of take over in our lives, and even our flesh and the motives of our flesh are going to rise up again, and we're going to start falling into that, and that's going to pull us away from the intimacy that we had with him. And then we get into loving others, loving other people around us. And, we talk so much about love the sinner, hate the sin, and I think when we kind of fall prey to the ways of this world and the idea of tolerance and how we need to tolerate everything, because that's love, we end up focusing so much on loving the sinner part that we don't hate the sin so much. And in the same way that our sincerity in our love for God diminishes, that happens with people too, that if we start just saying, oh, well, I'll just, love them through it, I won't call them out on anything, they're just, it's not my place or whatever, I'll tolerate their sin, we end up not loving them sincerely because we are not caring enough to show them the bondage that they're in, but more than that, show them that how their sin is disrespecting the holiness of God, and even how their sin is keeping themselves from being holy as God has called us to be holy, because he is holy, And so if our love is sincere for others, which it should be, we should love them enough to call them out, and love them enough to show them or help them walk away from what is keeping them in bondage and what is disrespecting God's holiness. And so anyway, it's just a neat thing to kind of go through that and see one, how those two sentences related, but two, how it really plays out in our lives, and the big struggles that we have with maintaining a very sincere love and letting that cause us to hate and have a righteous anger against the evil, and even do our part. If God calls us to say, speak truth against that evil, or if God calls us to just stand with him in the spiritual battle against that evil, or if God just calls us to walk in victory in our own lives, and help others walk in victory in their lives over evil, whatever it is, whatever way that God is calling us to make a stance against that evil, that should be the result of a sincere love for God. And if we're struggling to make a stand against evil, or even to truly cling to all that is good, which is only God, then we might have to question the sincerity of our love for him. And ultimately, like, our love for him comes from his love for us. So it's all about receiving first so that we can love with his love. We can love him with his love. We can love others with his love. But it kind of calls into question how sincere your love is. And I think the world does such a good job of making us think that there is no good hatred, that there is no righteous anger, but there very much is, and it's very much a result of just having a sincere love for him. If we love him sincerely, we're going to hate the evils that go against who he is, And I just thought back so much to the Psalms and all that David wrote in the Psalms. I thought it was so interesting that he wrote pretty much just as much about praying that God would smite the evil or bring justice to the sin that's going on around him. He wrote just as much about that as he did in thanking God for how wonderful he was and magnifying and praising him. And I just always wonder, I was like, why did he write so much about that? Why did he have such a hatred towards that, a heart against that? And God just really showed me this truth that David had the proper view of God and his holiness, and his love for him was so sincere that he wanted God to do everything he needed to do to diminish this evil, because all the evil that was going on around David, David hated it so much because it was going against the name of his God, and God, he loved him so much. I think even people were chasing after David and they hated David himself, but the thing that really made David rise up was not necessarily that they were going after him, but that they were going after God, or that their actions were defaming his holiness or dishonoring his holiness. And he wanted more than anything for justice to be done so that the holiness of God could be declared in the way it should be, And so I hope that's encouraging to you. I know it's kind of challenging, and it's kind of a big question mark for your life, but I hope that you can take it and look at your life and think, man, have I been trying to justify being neutral towards evil, or maybe not clinging to the good as much as I should? And how sincere is my love for God, or even in what ways does God want me to take a stance against the evil of this world? And it starts with the hatred against it, it starts with the anger against it. And I think out of that, God will lead us into how he wants to use us in the battle, which the battle has already been won. He is conquered it at the cross, but there is still spiritual warfare that we are part of, because Satan's warring against God. And I do believe that in the sense of being used by God, we can say, God, how do you want me to be used in this world still to make a stand against all that is going against your holiness? And I think he'll show you. And I think he'll start with just loving you sincerely and allowing your love back for him to give you that proper view of him first, but then the proper view of what's really going on in the world around you. And so I hope that's encouraging to you, and I hope that you can take that and really use that to change the world around you, and to change the people around you, and to really love them sincerely enough to speak truth into their lives. So have a good week.